What is up, guys? In today's video I want to talk about fasted training and why that might be the key to longevity, and more specifically fasted kettlebell training. So as always, the workout that you see me doing in this video is in the description below, so make sure you check that out, give it a spin. Not easy as always, and let's talk about it. So I've got three main sort of points I want to touch on, maybe four, but let's just call it three, as to why this is the case. I'll make the case for why fasted training is the key to longevity. And, this isn't going to be as usual, like me breaking down studies and being super scientific. This is really mostly my experience. Yes, I do believe it's grounded in science, and you can fact check me all you want. But again, this is my experience. I'm not trying to convince you guys of anything. You do you, but I think I'm going to make a pretty good case here. So the first point I want to talk about is why fasted training? Point number one is because it just makes the most evolutionary logical sense, if that makes sense, right? So think of this. You could ask ChatGPT this, okay? Ask it, of the time spent on this planet as Homo sapiens, as genetically identical species to what we are right now, human beings, of all of that time that we've spent on this planet, which I think is roughly 300,000 years, but again, you could fact check me, how much of that percentage-wise has been spent living as hunter-gatherers, right? More of that primal scarcity lifestyle. To your surprise, you will learn that that's 99%. 99% of our existence. That is mind-blowing. I didn't even know it was that high. So less than 1%, let's just say 1% of our existence as humans on this planet has been spent living as we do now, with abundant access to food, resources, and yada yada. And even that has taken time. Started about 10,000 years ago, and obviously 10,000 years ago we're nothing compared to what we are now. Now we're just we've got everything we need, right, at our fingertips. We're all living like kings. Even poor people are living like kings in the old days, right? But that's shocking, 99%. Why do I bring that up? Because that means that 99% of our existence has been spent during that time of scarcity. Going long bouts without eating, having to hunt for our food, having to gather our food, having to put forth a lot of physical and mental effort to just get our food, right? So it would have made no sense that we would have to fuel ourselves before exercising or moving, because the only purpose for exercise or movement, not only purpose, but the main purpose to do so is to go get food to survive, right? Nobody was lifting weights and mindlessly exercising back in the day because every calorie mattered. Energy was scarce. So when we did exercise, it was sprinting, throwing, hunting, getting food. That's it. And we would have had to do that fasted, maybe sometimes days into a fast, because we just haven't had access to anything in the meantime, right? Maybe some berries here and there, but we're not carb loading and then hitting the gym and doing our little workout. So that's point number one, right? Is that we are designed to do this. We evolved to train fasted, to move fasted, to exercise fasted, to endure that sort of struggle. We have the metabolic machinery to do so. And like I always say, if we don't use that which we're capable of using, we will lose it. And that doesn't mean we permanently lose it, goes away forever, but it means that if you don't use your ability to work out fasted, to go long bouts without eating in general, when you do try to work out fasted, it's going to be miserable, right? You're going to be like, this is not optimal. I feel like shit. I don't even feel like working out. This is bad. And then you have more people online saying, you're losing muscle. You need to be fueled properly. So that's kind of the main point, is it just doesn't make logical sense that we would have needed that. And now we've completely lost that ability. And that is what we need to maintain our robustness as humans. We need to be able to go long bouts without eating. We need to be independent of food, and we need to be able to work in a fasted state and not feel like crap, and do a lot more than we think that we can, right? Like, people think they need, like, if you do a hard workout, people are really brainwashed into thinking, I need a lot of fuel before that. No, you don't. You really don't. You can adapt. That's what adaptation is. That's why people train at altitude, for example. When you first start training at altitude, it doesn't feel good, right? It feels like shit because your body is not as efficient at using oxygen, at producing red blood cells. But then it becomes more efficient as you train at altitude. You start feeling better, you start feeling normal. And then when you leave altitude, now all of a sudden you're performing at a higher level because your body's become more efficient. Same thing here, which kind of leads me to my next point, which is point number two, metabolic flexibility. Because metabolic dysfunction, metabolic inflexibility, the inability to toggle between fuel sources, stored body fat, and incoming energy, carbs, glucose, sugar, that is lost within us. So when we don't exercise that capability, of course you're going to feel like crap when you don't have that incoming energy, just like you would if you were to go to altitude without ever training at altitude, right? It's going to suck for the first few days to a week, but then you slowly adapt. Same with training fasted. And what is that doing? That is basically training your metabolic machinery inside of your body on a cellular level to become more efficient at producing energy from yourself. And see, guys, that's actually why we store body fat. That's the whole purpose of body fat, is to have energy reserves for when we do have times of scarcity, which we evolved in and lived through for the vast, like I said, majority of our existence. So we have to be able to tap into that stored energy. But that sort of ability is lost in most people. That efficiency is gone. It's become inefficient. So when you train fasted, fasting in general does this, but when you train fasted, you force this metabolic flexibility. Because basically when you train fasted, guys, you're almost like hitting a fast forward button on the fasting timeline, right? Because you're draining yourself at a faster rate, especially, and this is my point with kettlebells. Why is kettlebell training, in addition to training fasted, why is fasted kettlebell training in particular, ideal for longevity? Because kettlebell training really, if you're training like most people do with kettlebells, like you see me doing in this video, it's pretty much high intensity interval training mixed with weightlifting, right? That's really what it is. And of course you could do that with barbells, you could do that with dumbbells, but the idea of the kettlebell is it's a much more functionally usable tool, meaning it's designed to be swung, it's designed to be used by your whole body to involve your legs, hips, and core. Everything you do with the kettlebell involves your core, and you're much more seamlessly and safely combining these aspects of high intensity interval training and weightlifting. And I've made this case before with kettlebells. You never have to go too heavy in weight relative to your body weight to feel a sufficient challenge. You're being extremely explosive with this weight, although your feet are not leaving the floor, so you're not pounding on your joints. You're actually building them up, turning your body into sort of that explosive springboard machine, getting that sprinter's physique. And you're never putting this weight directly on your spine or joints, all because of the physics of the kettlebell. So that's what separates the kettlebell from other tools. And then the training style, doing things like swings, snatches, supersetting those with more, grind-like movements like squats, thrusters, presses, or push-ups or pull-ups, whatever. All of these sort of movements in this style of training is pretty much high-intensity interval training combined with weightlifting in the safest way possible for your body and your joints, in not only a safe way, but in a way that bulletproofs your body against injury and helps you move better, helps you undo the kinks in your kinetic chain with things like snatches or get-ups or swings even. Like, these things basically train your body to move properly again and counteract all of the modern sort of ailments that we've bestowed upon ourselves, like chronic sitting, locked up posture, etc. So this style of training, especially in a fasted state, is going to it's going to basically drain your reserves, your glycogen, as they refer to it as, your stored energy, which is in the form of, I guess you could say, sugar, carbs, glycogen, glucose. You drain that faster. Thus, you force your body to tap into your stored body fat faster than you would have if you just fasted and didn't train, right? And again, the nature of these kettlebell workouts are they're very glycolytic, meaning they burn through glycogen very quickly. Again, hitting the fast forward button, forcing your body to toggle to that fuel source that we want to burn, stored body fat. And then the more you do that, like anything else, the more efficient your body becomes at it. So that's number 2. Number 3 is autophagy. And if you guys don't know, you've probably heard this before, but it's one of the main benefits of fasting. Autophagy essentially means self-eating. Your body is eating yourself in a good way. It's only eating the bad parts of yourself. This is basically a process your body undergoes to clean itself out that it only has the chance to do when you're not currently breaking down and digesting food, right? And again, back to my previous point, when you work out fasted, you're basically hitting that fast forward button on the fast, thus kicking yourself into autophagy even faster than you would have normally if you were just fasting, right? So what would normally occur after, let's say, 18 to 22 hours of a fast, autophagy-wise, might occur 8 to 10 hours into a fast just because you hit that hard kettlebell glycolytic workout, drained yourself, forced yourself more into that fasted state quicker, faster, right? Getting into the fasted state faster. So you're basically hitting that fast forward button on the fast, right? With this sort of glycolytic like training, right? And then I think that's literally everything. Those are my three main points. Is it makes sense evolutionarily. This is how we were designed to live. This is how we have evolved. We evolved to do this, and now we're not using it, so we're losing it. So we're becoming increasingly more dependent on food, which causes metabolic inflexibility, which causes type 2 diabetes, arguably is one of the causes of cancer and heart disease, right? Of course, those are a little bit more complex, but that is essentially the gist of it, guys. And they call cancer like type 4, type 5 diabetes for a reason, right? So it's becoming increasingly more recognized as a metabolic disorder, right? Which stems from not being metabolically flexible, not tapping into your stored body fat, not having this metabolic efficiency per se, right? And then the second thing, again, just recapping, is metabolic flexibility, like instilling that, getting your body used to that, exercising it, thinking of it as training at altitude. You're training your metabolic system to become more efficient without being dependent on food. And just so you guys know, because I love biking, I love long endurance activities. I like it. Obviously everything I do mostly is more minimalist, concise, efficient kettlebell workouts, but once in a while I'll go for a long bike ride, and I used to do that a lot more. I used to do that all the time. I've gone for 70-mile bike rides without having any food at all for hours, like deep into a fast, and it's doable. There's this guy, actually, this Australian guy. You should look him up. If you just look this up, I don't remember his name or anything, but if you look up Australian guy, marathon every day, 7 days, fasted, you'll find him. Basically what he did is exactly that. He ran 7 marathons, 1 marathon a day for 7 days straight, all without eating the entire time, fasted for 7 days while running these marathons. And he didn't. He did it. He succeeded. He did not bonk. If you're an endurance athlete, you know what bonking is. It pretty much means your body hits this physiological wall, like you just stop. You can't keep going. You're totally flat, out of energy because you need more carbs. This guy kind of proved that wrong. Do I think bonking is not a real thing? No, I think it's definitely a real thing. But I think it also is subjective. It depends on how metabolically flexible the individual is. If somebody is, let's just say, like full carnivore, they're used to fasting, they're used to training fasted, they will probably be able to go a lot longer without bonking than, say, somebody who's not fat adapted, as it's referred to as. And then finally, autophagy, also kind of piggybacking on the second point of metabolic flexibility, training will kick you into this sort of state of the fast faster because it hits that fast forward button. It depletes you quicker, right? And it forces these adaptations. And not to mention, guys, this is just me riffing here. Those are my 3 points. But another thing is I live by the mentality of I must earn my food. I don't eat without working out, no matter what day it is. Of course, not every day is going to be a hard workout, but I always move before I eat. Again, because of that first point. And that first point, it's not just about, using it so I don't lose it. This is literally how we feel happy and fulfilled, guys. I don't know if you realize that, but this is essentially a version of delayed gratification. And if you look up the marshmallow experiment from Stanford, where they really put this to the test and show the evidence of what delayed gratification does, just look into it, look at that study. Essentially, it proved that if you practice delayed gratification, that will lead to self-mastery, right? And why is that? Because we live in a world of instant gratification. We're instantly gratified. Thus, it raises the threshold of what it takes to make us feel gratified, what it makes to feel happy, right? So when you're constantly eating all day, you're constantly indulging in whatever vices you have, media, social media, you're numbing yourself all day. When you fast, and especially when you have this mentality of, I must work out in order to eat, you're forcing yourself into this earn it mentality, not just get it mentality. You don't just eat when you're hungry. You only are allowed to eat if you've worked out, no matter what time it is. Maybe you didn't get a chance to work out in the morning and now you're busy all day and it's 4 p.m. and you're starving, but you haven't worked out yet. Guess what? You got to work out first. And if you practice that mentality, that mindset, of course, it's good for all the physiological things that I just explained to you. But I'd argue most importantly than not is that's what makes you feel happy and fulfilled, because that's hacking your pleasure reward center as a human and not falling for the tricks of our modern lifestyle, which cause depression and anxiety. That's why people are depressed and anxious, because they've raised their threshold so high of what it takes to feel good that now it's like nothing does. But if you earn your food, for example, if you don't eat as soon as you're hungry, but only until after you've worked out, that food will taste better. You will feel better. You know what happiness and fulfillment is, guys? Of course, it's chasing your dreams, building your business, whatever. That's today's version. But you know what happiness and fulfillment used to be for the longest amount of time of our existence on this planet? And this isn't telling you to shoot low. You should still start a business, fucking succeed in life. That's besides the point. But what I'm saying is real happiness and fulfillment is, for example, trekking through the desert for 2 or 3 days with no food or water and finally stumbling upon a fresh, clear, clean pond of water, dunking your head in there and like drinking as much water as you can and feeling that pleasure. We've all felt that. We've all felt, working out outside in the heat, coming inside and finally getting some water, that pleasure. That's pleasure, guys. That is what we're stripping ourselves of. That's just one example. But this is what I'm talking about, is when you delay gratification, when you fast from things and then you have them, they hit harder. They feel better. If you scroll on your phone all day, that's what's going to cause anxiety. If you only scroll on your phone at a certain time of the day, when you finally get to that time of the day, it's far more rewarding. You feel it more. You feel more pleasure. That's how our pleasure reward system works, and that's how we can hack it to make sure that we stay happy, feel fulfilled, and derive pleasure from the simplest things in life as we're supposed to, okay? So that's it. Those are my talking points. I hope that all makes sense. And just to mention too, there's a lot of objections with working out fast. You're going to lose muscle, strength, but you're not going to lose any of that, all right? I've been consistently building muscle strength and upping my performance for the last 10, 12 years of doing this, okay? It works. So don't believe any of that. We are conditioned to do it. And the last thing I wanted to say is, and it's just like training at altitude, guys. Again, I keep going to that point because it's part of this sort of comfort lifestyle that we live in. Like everything needs to be perfect constantly. People need their pre-workout, they need their oatmeal, they need their carbs before the gym, they need their music, their headphones, and now they're ready to work out. Yeah. And it's like, no. It doesn't have to be optimal, right? It shouldn't be optimal. Like the more you train in an unoptimal setting, the better you will perform when things are optimal, right? So yeah, maybe you don't feel good when you train fasted. So what? Push through it. You force the adaptation, right? No pre-workout. Maybe no music sometimes. Maybe you train in the sun and the heat when you don't feel good and it's like, it's draining you and whatever. Those are like, it's just the same reason why people wear masks on their face when they work out, to restrict their breathing and force that adaptation. Why people train at altitude. Why people train, what's it called? With ankle weights on or a weight vest on. Like, these are all versions of like weighing your body down, of making things more challenging than they need to be and making them not optimal. Everybody thinks that their workouts need to be so optimal that they perform at the best. You're not competing in the Olympics, my guy. You're not competing against anybody besides yourself. So you might as well make that as challenging as possible. And then if you do compete, if you do have a jiu-jitsu tournament or you're going on a bike ride with friends, of course, fuel up a little bit before, right? You'll perform even better. And you'll be able to go longer without fueling up again because, again, you're fat adapted. You have that fuel. So it's all about adaptation, guys. We are adaptation machines. You are what you get yourself used to. And that is it. I'll leave you with that. Make sure you like the video if you're still here. Make sure you subscribe. I greatly appreciate you. And I'll see you next time. Peace.